Are we now having to carry the debts of the nation, which are significant, which aren't just to do with banks, by the way, they're to do with the fact we've been living beyond our means over decades. We've got the debts to deal with. We're all struggling to afford property. I mean, the average age now of buying a home nationally is 37. First home, not house, first home. What was it when you were closer to that age then? Probably about 27, I would suggest. Yeah. So the trend is older. And the same generation are struggling to own a home, are also now encountering the responsibilities of elderly parents and grandparents, in fact, and having to wrestle with that, and wrestle with the fact that a lot of it's means tested, which I think is perverse, because it actually is counter to people saving for the future. You want people to actually take responsibilities for themselves. So penalising people for having £100,000 in the bank when they get to that stage, and not someone who doesn't, it's also, for me, it's wrong. You should be encouraging people to save for themselves and for their families. So I think there's a lot of work to do in government to change that. But this generation currently in work are going to carry the burdens of trying to get property, carry the burdens of an aging population, and at the same time expected to procreate, expected to have children, expected to put them through university with £9,000 tuition fees. And it's all hitting the same generation. And I think it's really just normal, which is why I'm not in favour of universal benefits for the elderly. And, you know, in the last election, that was my party's policy, and it was probably in my literature, I can't remember. But I don't see how on earth it is justifiable to have a winter fuel allowance, free bus pass, and all these things for elderly residents, but expect younger people to pay tuition fees, to have to save 20 years for a deposit. This is not right.
Because they paid their tax in themselves.
No, they didn't. That's the problem.
No, I'm sorry, my father is 67.
Yeah.
He was on 40% tax.
Yeah.
He pays tax on his shares that he now cashes in. He has pensions all over the place because he paid into pensions. Yeah. He owns his own property outright. He doesn't claim any NHS or anything. So why shouldn't he get a bus pass? Why shouldn't he get...
Because we can't afford it.
But he's paid all his tax in, and he still continues to pay
tax.
But
as a state, we owe what, £2 trillion.
So why can millionaires take a cut then, so that they could have more money, and the pensioners, like her dad, have got to suffer?
Well, first of all, I'll be really happy if I own my property right and have shares at 67. My generation will struggle to achieve that. That's the first thing. Secondly, with regards to millionaires, the way in which you pitch income tax, it's dependent on two things. One, the global reality. Somebody who's able isn't going to stick around if you're going to clobber him for tax. He's going to go somewhere else. It's the first thing. Secondly, it is demonstrable, evidence-based, that taxing at 50% actually collects less tax than it is at 40%. It's something called the Laffer curve. You reduce income tax rates, you increase tax take. It's a bit counterintuitive, but it's the way it is. Personally, we should have gone from 50p to 40p, or just left it alone, just left it at 50p. I didn't understand going halfway. Personally, I'd have gone down to 40p. And I said, look, because the evidence in the 80s was that the total tax take from the wealthiest went up between 1979 and 1992, even though they put tax rates down. The total tax take went up. So it's not, I know how it looks. It's like the rich get the tax break, and you're cutting this from people who've got less money. But actually your income tax rates need to be positioned in a way to generate the most wealth for the nation. And it's, I don't think we're there yet. But I hear what you say about he's paid his taxes, and it sounds like he's paid a significant amount of tax. But I'm not looking at the individual case, I'm looking at the nation's accounts.
So is that
we're in debt up to our eyeballs. We are the worst affected by the nation in Europe in terms of debt and liability. It's over 500% of GDP.
Excuse me. Could you tell me why we are donating £100 million to India, Bangladesh, Africa, and all the other nations that Britain are giving to these countries, and we should stop that and look after our own first?
I agree.
Oh, you agree? Well, why can't something be done about it? Because
Yeah,
everybody's the same.
first of all, I'm not in favour of an independent international development department. Okay? I'm against it. There is an argument in some cases for direct aid that I think could come from the Foreign Office. I don't think you need an individual department with all the attendant costs. The new Secretary of State for International Development is a pretty tough cookie. I know Justine well. She's stopping in India. All this is all being reined in. It's all being stopped. So it's all being pared down. There are still significant sums going into sub-Saharan Africa. I think there is an aid role for aid, and I think we are, despite our debt situation, we're much wealthier than the majority of countries in the world. So there is a certain obligation upon us to make donations. Personally, though, I would rather see it as a charitable donation than a government donation. Okay? I would rather give you more money in your pocket, sir, but when you walk down in Bracknell and someone's going to with the Christian aid thing, you put your pound in.
Yeah.
I'd rather it was that way round than government aid. Okay? But government policy, as it stands, is protection, ring-fence of international development money. I'm not in favour of it. I wasn't in favour of ring-fencing the health budget last time around, sir, because I don't see how you separate health and education. The education of our children is just as important.
My other question is, sorry, not to be rude, my other question is, where does this money come from? Does it come out of the taxpayer again? Because that's all it is, taxpayer all the time. Forking out.
Borrowing. This year,
We never get it back.
I know, with this year, we are borrowing more than £100 billion from the board.
Yeah, but we shouldn't have to. We're supposed to be one of the best countries in the world.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, our debts and our liabilities are the only thing really to talk about. I can't tell you, in terms of my responsibility, going right back to the start of the meeting, when you wanted to crucify me because I wouldn't talk about James Sparks. I understood. But I understood that. But actually, if there's one responsibility that I carry, and indeed all parliamentarians carry, is what on earth are we going to do about the level of debt and liability that the state has in this country? It is huge. It is immense. And at the moment, the only reason the country is actually paying its way is because interest rates are so low. They are so low. There are people in this room, I can imagine, who were paying mortgage rates of 12, 13, 14% 20 years ago. Okay. Can you imagine your mortgages, those are looking at the younger members of the audience, if their mortgages were 12%, what would you be doing? You'd be doing about 4 jobs a week.
Wouldn't have bought a house.
Yeah. Okay, so if you can imagine, we're now sitting here with over £1 trillion worth of personal debt as a nation, and over £1 trillion worth of debt as a state, to government debt. And the liabilities on pensions, we can't make our, it's about 2 trillion unmet liabilities on public sector pensions. Over £4 trillion worth of debt and liability, trillion, trillion, zeros, loads of zeros, okay? And it's 0.5%. What's it going to be like when it's 5%? 10 times the rate. I tell you what, it's going to be rough. And I worry, I genuinely worry about how it's going to get. So it's another reason why I do these meetings. It's because I want to be able to look you in the eye and say, look, I told you that's how I thought it was going to be. So when you absolutely despise the ground I walk on in 2021 or 2022, and we're having to scrap benefits, scrap pensions, or scrap this, or scrap. I'm not saying, that's the type of level
But to
we're
be
going
honest,
to
that's the way it is headed, isn't it? We've worked houses,
well,
we're old, poor, disabled.
I tell you what I'm telling you, you look at Cyprus, what happened in Cyprus. The government took money out of people's deposit accounts.
Yeah.
Okay? That could happen. Alright? Now, if that's the case, you have to put that in you have to think about that and put everything that I say about benefits and the health service and everything in context. I wish I could come here and say, look, of course, here's a bus service, here's a shop, here's a GP surgery, here's a hospital at the end of your road. It's just not going to happen. And it isn't going to happen primarily because of a legacy of debt. The etiology of it, the causation of it, there's lots of factors. But a significant factor in it is, I think, is that we've been living as a society beyond our means for decades. It's not party political. Okay? It's not Tories or Labour. It's actually as a nation, we've just been having a laugh. You know, for about, well, probably since the war. And I understood, and I understand this, my granddad's 89 in 2 weeks' time, fought in Halifax following the war. I asked him what it was like. And I understand in 1945 he voted to be looked after, essentially. You'd have the absolute kicked out of you. And as a nation, they voted for a post-war settlement of welfare state, a health service, of an education system that was paid for by the state. Everything was the state. We're now 60, 70 years on, and we can't afford it. And we never really could afford it because the debts have been slowly going up over that time. And now we find ourselves with a significant debt, a portion of which is to do with banks, at a time where we have an aging society. A society that is going to become increasingly dependent through no fault of their own because it's just the fact of the aging process. And we just need to wake up and go, right, well, how can we deal with this? What can we do? And it's going to be working harder, longer, for less. We're going to have less. Our lifestyles are going to diminish. We're not going to have as much in the future as we've had in the past. We may have more, perversely, community spirit. There may be benefits in that we all come together, that families matter more. Because at the moment I think it's all rather atomized. Everybody's being independent life and screens. Grandparents are 100 miles away and everything else. Maybe the positive aspect of it is that families will come together. But we have to accept that materially we haven't got any money. And that we're reliant upon gentlemen like this to set up businesses, to thrive, and to be competitive in a world that is incredibly competitive because of the internet and the movement. Everything is totally different now. And so we've got to try and maximise. Positive is that we've got entrepreneurial, innovative people that we all have to recognise, and I mean all, millionaires and the poor. We all have to recognise that things are going to have to change about how we look after ourselves. And it's not easy.
Very quickly, just coming back to your point about Cyprus.
Yeah.
What's your take on what happened with taking money out of accounts?
Yeah.
And do you think it set a precedent that could happen elsewhere in Europe?
Yes. It answers the final thing, yes.
Yeah.
Cyprus was complicated by the fact that a lot of the money in the bank accounts was Russian money. And the Russians, understandably, weren't overly happy about the fact that their bank accounts were being raided. And the reason that Russian money was there is a whole different discussion. But the concept of the state raiding deposit accounts, yes, we crossed the Rubicon on that. I'm not suggesting it's going to happen anytime soon, but what I found quite chilling was a good friend of mine had sent me an email of a video. I don't know if anybody takes the money when you connect, but you might see it on experience. It's online, and Money Week did a video, a 15-minute film about money, and the state of this nation's finances. And they got some Armageddon scenario in the future. In that video, they say the state will take money out of deposit accounts. And he'd sent it to me 2 weeks before the Cyprus thing happened. And I thought to myself, my God, there's a sense of this may play out in a certain way. Whether it does or not here or not, who knows? But we need to be realistic about the fact that the money has to be found. We can't just keep printing it, we can't just keep pushing the can down the road. Those debts are there, and people who owe that debt, which is sort of a mysterious part of it, it's people like sort of Norwegians and Singaporeans and Chinese, the people who've got money and savings, they're going to want it back. So it's, they don't get it back, then you get into conflict. Get into some 1914 scenarios. Very impressive.
So we best draw the money out and put it under our bed, shall
Well,
we?
no, that's a bank run. Essentially, that's a bank run. People going to the bank and taking the money.
That's the concerning thing, because you've obviously, I don't want to use the word preach, but you've highly recommended saving your money, you're going to have to support your family, and then you get raided.
Of course.
It's like, well, it can always create a laissez-faire attitude of, well, we'll live for today and solve.
Absolutely, but that's the moral hazard I was referring to. That's the problem with governments intervening in banks, either to prop them up or to steal your deposits. That's the problem. And that's what we shouldn't be doing. And I think that I think this country, the British, actually, when push comes to shove, they'll take the medicine. But the British will only take the medicine if they think it's being fairly dished out and if it's really necessary. And at the moment, my judgment is that I don't think the British people think it's needed. I don't actually think I remember saying at a meeting in Crowthorne a couple of years ago that the pension system was a Ponzi scheme. The Ponzi scheme is essentially, it's like a pyramid, people coming at the bottom, paying for people at the top, sort of the other way around. So, essentially, I'm going to get this right. People who are retired now, like your father, his pension is not being paid for by his tax. His pension is being paid for by this gentleman's tax.
He also has a number of private pensions.
I'm on about the state.
So let's just not say that he takes any money from the state.
No, give me misunderstanding. I'm on about his state aspect of his income, the state pension and the bus pass and everything else, is not paid for by his tax.
He didn't actually take his bus pass, to be fair.
It's not, I'm just using an example.
Yeah.
That aspect of it, the state aspect of it, is not paid for by his tax. His tax paid for his pension going across the time. Okay? His pension is being paid for by this gentleman's tax.
And my tax.
And his gentleman's pension will be paid for if you've got children, their tax. And it's reliant on people coming in at the bottom to pay at the top.
And there's not enough people at the bottom.
Right, and there are fewer people coming in at the bottom. And it would be worse, I don't want to provoke the debate, if we didn't have immigration. We rely upon immigration a lot to come in to pay the tax. That's a whole different issue, so I don't want to open up, but that's how it is at the moment. It's getting worse. There are fewer people at the bottom coming in relation to people being retired. So it's a Ponzi scheme. When I said that in Crowthorne, there was a young lady in the front who didn't even understand that's the case. She looked at me and said, no one's ever told me. And that, I think, is part of the problem with this whole issue, is the public, be it because they're not engaged, not interested, don't care, whatever it is, or maybe because they're not told, whatever the reason is, the general public, in my experience, don't understand the real financial situation the country is in. And I think it's really necessary that they do, because then they will understand the need for quite stringent, difficult policies to be implemented. They will not accept it if they haven't understood that there's, Margaret Thatcher famously used to write TINA in the columns of documents. And TINA was an acronym for There Is No Alternative. You just get like a TINA over documents. And I don't think that we're going to get to the stage where we want to pay back these debts and get to a point where our pensions are sustainable until we make some very, very difficult decisions as a country. And you can only make those difficult decisions if the people are with you, the politician. And at the moment, I don't think the people really are with the politicians. I really don't.
And you believe that's through a lack of understanding?
I think there's a response. I think my predecessors, not my personal, but political predecessors, I think, didn't want to talk about it because they knew it was deeply unpopular. So, how on earth did my party go into the last election promising universal benefits to the elderly? I don't know, because I look at it and think it was pretty evident finances were ropey. The reason they did was because the political reality was that if you started saying scrap free bus passes, scrap registered kilometres, you lose votes. Exactly. And I'm suggesting that actually a more sophisticated debate would be to have with that population group is you having your free bus passes and fuel allowances means we're having to put extra tuition fees on younger generation. There's only so much money to go around. And I don't think that level of debate has been had. So I think politicians are responsible for that. They've not actually trusted people to make a decision on the basis of the information. But I'm, in my own small way, I'm trying to address it. I think we're talking one more question. We're going to be the last one.
Unless everybody else wants to. I want to ask a question about energy.
Yeah.
Now, this is an essential item to everybody.
Yeah.
And I don't see the government doing a lot in terms of helping to reduce the amount of money we pay to the utility companies.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about solar panels, so I don't even want to go to that side.
Yeah.
But it's just, it seems that the less you use, the more or the higher the price goes up.
Thank you for that rather short and sweet question that won't take me half an hour to answer, Michael. Right, the government's doing a hell of a lot actually. I sat on the Energy Bill Committee, so trust me, there's a lot of legislation that's gone through. The government's Green Deal is about trying to help people become more energy efficient in their homes. So I would encourage all of you to log on, Green Deal, see what you could do and what government will help you do in terms of insulating your homes. Because the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to energy is just not using it. So if you make your homes, your cars, everything energy efficient, that's the best piece of advice I can give you. Okay? Because energy prices are likely to continue up in our lifetime. There may be a bit of this, but up. And the major driver for that, finite resource. Shale gas in America complicates that a bit, but essentially you're dealing with something that isn't infinite, it's finite. So therefore, scarcity will become an issue, so prices go up. The other thing that's driving that is population. We've tipped over 7 billion. The population of the Earth has doubled in my lifetime. All of those people are looking to heat their homes, feed their families, work, travel.